So we're entering week 1 of the course. We're going to start in the first chapter, and the first chapter is actually kind of an interesting chapter in that it's a combination of kind of an introduction to the topic of abnormal psychology, and it also has a lot of research related stuff in it. We're going to focus more on the theory, not as much on the research stuff. So you'll notice in chapter 1 that a lot of the stuff that you read in the book, we do not cover in the lecture and the PowerPoint associated with it. So if you're noticing a discrepancy between what you're seeing in the chapter and what you're seeing on the PowerPoint, don't stress it, right? And I'll give you a study guide at the end of this video to help prepare you for the quiz. Okay, so learning activities that you have for this week, you do have the Chapter 1 YouTube lecture that is available to you. It's oriented in a playlist, so for each topic, each slide, there's kind of one specific video for that. So it's a bunch of little chunks that are lined up to go in sequential order. There's also some videos that help to illustrate concepts that we talk about in the chapter, and you'll see that that's the same format that we'll use for other YouTube lectures later this semester. So you have access to the YouTube lecture. You don't have to use it if you don't want to use it, but I think that you will find that it'll be very helpful for you both in understanding the material and more practically perhaps doing well on the quiz. So make use of it if you will. There's also a PowerPoint file that corresponds to that YouTube lecture. So you can use that. What I would actually encourage you to do is just like you were in a face-to-face class, print out that PowerPoint file, and as you're watching the video, as you're watching the lecture, write notes on the side. So you're kind of recreating the dynamic that you would get in a classroom setting. You also have a documentary that you're going to watch for this week, which I think is a really interesting one. It's called Hidden in Plain Sight, and it's produced by the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, Corporation, I think it is. And what the documentary is set up as is there's a group of individuals that come to like this, it almost looks like a castle to me. It's like a nice house. And they're filming this documentary, and they're putting people through all of these different like tests, like a memory test. And in the first video, you'll see they have to do this really dirty task, which is kind of like, oh. And as they're doing these tasks, there's a group of mental health professionals that are watching them. So they're getting all this video footage of people engaging in these tasks, and these mental health professionals are watching them. And what the mental health professionals are trying to do is to assess who in that group of participants actually has a mental health problem, because there are some people who have diagnosed mental health conditions in this group, and the rest of the group does not. And it's kind of an interesting, not really a research study, but it's kind of an interesting pseudo test of how reliable are these diagnoses that we give people who have mental health problems. Are we able to just know that someone has a mental health problem by observing the way they act? So I hope that you'll find the video to be kind of interesting. So your assignments for this week, you do have the Chapter 1 quiz. Chapter 1 quiz is 10 questions. It is 15 minutes in length. You have 15 minutes to complete it. You can certainly complete it sooner than that if you'd like to. But at 15 minutes, the quiz will stop, your answers will be submitted, and it's done. You don't have an extension past 15 minutes. So I say that to say, I'd encourage you go into the quiz, having read the chapter, having reviewed the PowerPoints, having listened to the YouTube lecture, go in prepared. What I would strongly encourage you not to do is to start taking the quiz, and as you're taking the quiz, look at the chapter for the first time, look at the PowerPoints for the first time, and try to learn in the spur of the moment. Chances are you're going to run into problems if you do that, which some of you will accept as a challenge, and that's perfectly okay. You also have your first discussion board for this week. So remember, with the discussion board, we have a couple of things that we need to keep in mind. You need to get your answers posted by 11:59 p.m. Friday night. Your answers should be substantial, right? So for each discussion question, you want to give a solid paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences, give details from the video that help to illustrate, your rationale for answering the way that you do. You also need to reply to 2 classmates' posts. And again, your reply should be a solid paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences. A reply should not be, cool story, bro. Thanks for sharing. Like, that's not really that beneficial to the dynamic of creating good discussion in a classroom. Comment on something that they shared, something that they noted, and take it further, or talk about maybe why you didn't feel the same way, in a respectful manner, of course. Your discussion board, you need to make sure that you're not posting all in one day. So you have two deadlines, answers posted by 11:59 p.m. Friday night, and then by 11:59 p.m. Sunday night, you need to have made sure that you have responded to two classmates' posts. But what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to log in just on one day and post all of your answers and your replies. So what I don't want you to do is to log in Friday night, post your answers, post two replies to classmates, and then never log in again. You can do that if you want to, post your answers and post replies to two classmates' posts, but then I also want you to log in on Saturday or Sunday and give another reply or comment back to people who commented on your answers. So keep those deadlines in mind. Please make sure that you're kind of managing your time to meet those deadlines. If we take a look at, so quiz number 1, 10 multiple choice questions, 15 minutes to complete it. These are the things that I want you to know for the quiz. So I'm giving you basically a study guide, right? Doesn't mean the other stuff that's not on the study guide isn't important, isn't cool, isn't interesting. It's just for the purposes of the quiz, this is what I want you to focus on. So I want you to know what disease burden is. What does that term refer to? Why is it important to have this calculation? And how is it calculated? What factors go into determining the degree of disease burden? I want you to know the difference between a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a social worker. So we have differences as it relates to levels of education and then also professional responsibilities. Be able to distinguish between the three. I want you to know what comorbidity means in relation to this class. We perhaps have a different definition of comorbidity for this course than maybe you would associate it with from other courses. Related to epidemiology, 3 types of statistics that we commonly see: incidence rate, prevalence rate, lifetime prevalence rate. I want you to know what each one of those terms refers to, how they're different. I give you some examples in the YouTube lecture to help illustrate that. 3 ways of kind of assessing whether someone's behavior is abnormal: cultural inappropriateness, subjective distress, psychological disability. What does each one of those terms refer to? What are we talking about? Epidemiology, what is it? What does it focus on? What is it assessing? And then also we go over on one slide some data related to the prevalence of mental health problems, data that comes from epidemiological research. That's a mouthful to say. And then finally, reliability versus validity. What do those 2 terms mean and how are they different? So this is actually 2 terms. These are actually 2 terms that we're going to come back to at another point in a later chapter and go a little more in depth, but I want you to be generally familiar with it now, so it'll make that understanding a little bit easier in the later chapter. So these are the assignments that you have for this week. If you have questions, if you have problems, please do reach out to me. Either send me an email through Warwick email or Blackboard message. I want to be here to answer those questions. Please also make sure that you're managing your time, right? You have deadlines for this course. I don't give extensions for work, so you need to make sure that you're budgeting your time accordingly, okay? Problems, questions, reach out. Otherwise, enjoy your first week of the semester.